Right now, in India, the very future of food is, well, it's on trial. Today, we're diving into one of the country's most intense debates, genetically modified crops. It's a massive battle, pitting economic survival against environmental caution, and the shiny promise of science against some really deep-seated social fears. And believe it or not, at the heart of this incredibly complex issue is just a single crop. But the stakes, they could not be higher. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar problem and a nation that is truly divided on how to secure its own food future. So you have to wonder, how did we even get here? How on earth did a simple mustard seed, a staple in kitchens all across India, end up as the main event in a high-stakes showdown at the nation's Supreme Court? Okay, let's get into it. The story of GM mustard isn't just some dry scientific affair. No way. It's a legal drama that's been playing out for years, and it's basically put the entire future of agricultural biotechnology in India on trial. Man, the last few years have been a total roller coaster. In 2022, regulators gave GM mustard the green light, but just a year later, legal challenges slammed the brakes on its release. By 2024, the Supreme Court was completely deadlocked, delivering a split verdict. So now, the whole case is being kicked up to an even larger hearing, leaving the crop's fate and a potential agricultural revolution just hanging in the balance. To really understand why this is such a massive deal, we have to rewind a bit and look at the promise. What problem was this genetically modified mustard, which goes by the name DMH11, actually created to solve? Well, the answer starts with this one, frankly, staggering number, $10.5 billion. That's about how much India has to spend every single year just importing edible oils. And that's the core of the problem. India is critically dependent on other countries for a kitchen staple, importing over 60% of its cooking oil. DMH11, a variety that was developed by a team right at the University of Delhi, was designed to tackle this dependency head-on by boosting production right here at home. And this is the magic number its creators are pointing to. They say DMH11 has the potential to increase mustard yields by about 28% compared to what farmers are getting now. A jump that big could radically change India's import bill. So how does it work? Well, the science is a pretty fascinating three-step process. First, scientists use a gene called Barnase to basically switch off the plant's ability to pollinate itself. This then makes it super easy to cross-pollinate it with another high-performing variety. And finally, a second gene called Barstar is introduced to switch the fertility back on, creating a really robust, high-yield hybrid seed. It's also really important to remember that this isn't India's first rodeo with GM crops. The country's only commercially approved one so far is BT cotton. Since it was introduced way back in 2002, it is completely taken over. We're talking it now covers more than 90% of all cotton cultivation. And that history is crucial because it casts this long shadow, fueling both the powerful hopes and the profound fears in today's debate. But of course, every promise comes with a question mark. So let's flip the coin and look at the other side of the debate. Why is there such fierce opposition to what seems like a solution to a major economic problem? This quote from the Swadeshi Jagran Manch perfectly sums up the opposition's view. They argue for Swadeshi, which means self-reliance, and their claim is that this crop is neither truly Indian, nor is it safe. Generally speaking, the concerns fall into three main buckets. Opponents are worried about potential damage to the environment, the unknown effects on human health, and the negative impacts it could have on the rural economy. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the central conflict. See, a key feature of GM mustard is that it's tolerant to a specific herbicide. Proponents say, great, this makes weed control easier and more efficient. But opponents fear this will just lead to farmers overspraying that chemical, which they claim could create herbicide-resistant superweeds and harm soil health. And the list of worries doesn't stop there. There are fears of genetic contamination where the GM variety could cross-pollinate with India's diverse local mustards. Concerns have been raised about the impact on vital pollinators like honeybees. Critics also point to a lack of long-term biosafety data from studies done in India. And then there's the potential loss of manual weeding jobs, which are a lifeline for millions of rural women. So with such strong arguments on both sides of the fence, who's supposed to be the referee in this complex debate? Who makes the final call? That huge responsibility falls to this body.
the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, or GEAC for short. It's the highest authority in India for regulating all GM organisms, and it operates under the Ministry of Environment. Basically, no GM product can be released commercially without the GEX stamp of approval. And as we saw earlier, in October 2022, after its assessment, the committee did recommend DMH11 for environmental release. And that's the decision that triggered this whole legal standoff. Which brings us right back to the Supreme Court, where this scientific and economic debate has escalated into a defining question about national policy and the future of Indian agriculture itself. The two-judge bench just couldn't reach a consensus. That split verdict means there's no clear legal path forward. It's a stalemate, which effectively keeps GM mustard out of farmers' fields, at least for now.
The core of the dissent really came down to this critical point. One of the judges argued that the GEAC's approval process was flawed because it relied on studies from other countries instead of commissioning enough independent long-term studies right here on Indian soil to see what the specific impacts would be.
But here's the one thing both judges did agree on: the need for a much clearer path forward. They've directed the central government to establish a comprehensive national policy to govern the research, cultivation, and trade of all GM crops, hoping to prevent these kinds of stalemates in the future. And so the country finds itself at a true crossroads. The case of GM mustard has forced a national reckoning. Will India embrace biotechnological innovation to solve these massive economic and food security issues? Or will it choose a more cautionary path, prioritizing the potential environmental and social risks? The answer, whichever way it goes, will define its food future for decades to come.